Welcome back to the Torque Test channel. We got a real roller coaster for you today in the form of 3 different generations of Bosch's Freak impact driver. Stick around because there's plenty of dyno results that make us really scratch our head on this one. This is generation 1 of the Bosch Freak, an impact driver with both 1/4-inch hex shank collet for hex drivers and adapters and 1/2-inch square drive for sockets. A design we think is pretty cool, and if nothing else might save us from breaking more impact adapters than usual, which is something we tend to do. This IDH 182 came out over 7 years ago now. This is one of the first iterations of Bosch's EC brushless motor, and it's rated for 1650 inch-pounds or 138 foot-pounds. Recently, Bosch came out with their GDX 18V-1800B at 1800 inch-pounds, and they're calling that their Generation 2. But really, this is only their second generation of brushless Freaks. A couple years after the first gen came out, Bosch introduced the 1600B, a more cost-effective but brushed Freak model that could be had for a bit less than the original, but was also rocking less spec at 1600 inch-pounds, 50 inch-pounds less. So if the 1800 is Gen 2, this one is really Gen 1.5, and the IDH 182 is Gen 1. We're going to test them all today, thanks to our friend Ryan, who loaned us his Gen 1. Check out his YouTube channel below as he's helping us to fabricate our next dyno rig, so go check that out. And a big thanks to viewer Jacob, who loaned us his Gen 1.5 and Gen 2 Bosch Freaks. As with the generations from 1 to 2, these tools have gotten smaller, save for that brushed version. It also appears as they are increasingly removing lighting. The Gen 1 has 2 side lights and 1 extra below to function as 3 headlights. Gen 1.5 removed the 2 side lights and has just 1 below, and with the latest they moved it all the way down to the battery. Is Gen 3 just going to come with a keychain light you have to use with your spare hand? With the losses we've presumably been experiencing with impact adapters testing drivers in this series, the Bosch Freak should enjoy a bit of a leg up on the others in being able to perform these tests directly onto the socket, but we'll test with an adapter too at some point in this process just to see what difference there is there, if any. We're going to use the same 4 amp hour Bosch core battery on each driver, as we think it's a great 18 volt baseline battery for most of their non-Pro Factor tools. With plenty of tests to show, we are going to go in order of generations, which is sort of a mix-up in torque spec and price on this Gen 1, which went for around $130 when it was sold, and Gen 1.5 around $105, and the current version seems to be price locked at $159, even though you can sometimes find a kit at $159. $159 is as low as it goes. Our first test is called Working Torque 5 seconds and forward. Here's Gen 1. "57 foot-pounds. That doesn't seem like a lot, but that's only because, well, it's not. Check this out. Loosening this thing is a pretty simple task we normally don't do by hand. Next up is what we're calling Gen 1.5, which is rated for even less torque. "50 foot-pounds. Things are really not looking so hot for the Freaks. Impact drivers usually hit their numbers in this first test, believe it or not, and these tools are calling out numbers like 138 and 133. The newest Freak is last up in this first test. Come on and save us, Gen 2. "110. All right, now we're talking some modern numbers. Let's take a look at reverse. Now with this max torque test, which is 10 seconds in that counterclockwise direction. Here's the Gen 1.5 taking on the Gen 1 with both on screen. "62 foot-pounds. Geez, and it took quite a bit to get going too. It doesn't take Thor a lot of sauce to remove something like that. Time for the new Gen 2 to step in. 135. Okay, that's respectable. This gen is really a big step up from the 1 and 1.5. Our last series of tests is called max forward torque. Also 10 seconds. Impact drivers usually perform best in forward, which makes sense for how they're used. Let's take a look at that. Here's the IDH 182. .71 foot-pounds. And here's the 1600B. Also 71 foot-pounds. And just take a look at this thing while just holding onto the socket by hand. It's not going to budge. You could hold this for a minute, it wouldn't move. What the heck is going on with these things? In order to sort of put our minds at ease for a minute, we put a pause to this testing process and decided to try these out with impact adapters, just for the hell of it. Theoretically, these should be worse, but can it even get worse? Here's the Gen 1 with an adapter, this time versus its previous working torque run. Wait, what? Higher? As usually, we do 3 tests. Same deal. So does that apply the same difference to a decently powerful Gen 2 then? Let's see a redo of its working torque run and find out on that guy. .129 foot-pounds now, same deal, higher for some reason. This is very counter to our own experience, as we have some unique experience on this very matter, as we tested Mancaver Tools' Frankenstein Milwaukee, which shoehorned a 1/2-inch anvil in there and made more than a regular impact driver with this same impact adapter we're using. Yet somehow that logic is backwards on the one tool that's designed to take advantage of it. Let's redo the Gen 1's max forward run now with the adapter, since for some reason freaks like that. Appropriately named tool for sure. .109 now. Before it was just matching that bottom run of the Gen 1.5, a tool that makes really the same low power with an adapter or not usually. Is anybody else as confused about this as we are? We have data from 3 runs each, with and without adapters on multiple tools, all the same sort of relationship. Does Bosch even know this stuff? Anyways, our last and final test we're showing, we've certainly had enough of them, sorry for that, is Gen 2 max forward. Adapter on this one because, well, it makes the most that way. .154, back to the real impact drivers numbers again, but just look at this relationship of power between these 3 models. And other tests where it was even more dramatic under the same conditions. Let's assume for a second that Gen 1 should be rated for 1650 like Bosch is telling us. Using their own math, that would make the Gen 0.5 brush model more like a 1215B, not a 1600, and the Gen 2, sheesh, that should be named 2650, not 1800, if we're playing on the same game here. Of course, it's not 2650 or 220 foot-pounds. Let's throw the M18 driver on here. Yes, we're still not talking big leagues here, not that we were expecting it. Let's take a look at the rank chart and see if that agrees with our analysis. We're effectively doubling the number of tools on our drivers list by adding these 3. Let's see how they stack up. Their power runs here have been updated, almost all of them with adapters, as that's where the beans are. Those runs get divided by 5 on our drivers list. That makes for 14, 23, and 22. Then 11, 14, and 14. And 26, 29, and 31 for the Gen 2 that really brought the sauce. The brush model is the longest tool at 6.7 inches long and gets 10.6 points. Ouch. The Gen 1 is 6.2 and gets 18.4. still not great, and the Gen 2 is the shortest at 5.8 inches and made the most power, so 26.6. Torque claims, oh man, these are some of the first impact drivers we've tested that have been sort of all over the map in that regard. The Generation 1 gets 83%, making 114 of its claimed 138, or 1650 inch-pounds. The Gen 1.5 gets a heavy beating with 53%, and the Gen 2 is like any of the other modern impact drivers, making its claim no sweat and gets the normally standard 100 points here. Now, price is a function of power. That's 7, 5.4, and 7.8 points. Our current impact drivers list is foot-pounds over dollars times 8 rather than most of our lists, which are times 15, since the rest of the numbers on this list are comparatively small to not throw the balance out of whack. An impact driver on Amazon that advertises 70 foot-pounds and makes 70 foot-pounds for $35 could otherwise take the lead. These points total for these three tools as 167.4, 108, yikes, and 220.4, putting these on the rank list where you might have assumed they would go. But then again, this is early days on our drivers list, and the first three we tested are essentially the best drivers we could dream of. We've yet to include some more budget-friendly examples on this list, so we expect the Gen 2 Freak might do decently at the end of the day. Our wrap up on what we've learned today, in our opinion, is the most interesting part of this whole thing. Let's summarize some of our findings. 1, you were told by Bosch the Gen 1 makes 138 foot-pounds. Nope, more like 114 on a good day. Every other driver on this dyno has made its claim in 5 seconds, so that would be more like 69 foot-pounds on this guy. Number 2, you were told by Bosch the brush version makes a little bit less than the Gen 1, just 3%. Nope, more like 36% across all of its runs. Next, you were told by Bosch the Gen 2 makes 1800 inch-pounds, about 9% more than the Gen 1. Well, they were right about one thing. The 1800, it made 1850 in ours, but only 9% more beans than the Gen 1. This made 1.5 times more than that, and almost 2.5 times more than the brush model. You're told by marketing that Bosch implies, and well, everyone else who's ever talked about these tools, that the half-inch drive will help this tool work more like a compact impact wrench when you want it to, or at least eliminate some hex adapter losses maybe. Well, nope, Gen 1 and Gen 2 both far preferred the 1/4 inch hex to half-inch square drive, for heaven knows why. And 5, we think this is our main takeaway. Everyone being sold on the fact that Bosch Freaks over the years past have any real comparable power to anything else out there, and a half-inch drive on it to convince you to try to use it on some serious applications. If someone told you before this past year with the introduction of the 1800 Gen 2, or maybe you were telling yourself this the whole time, that these tools had really any real power, you'll need to get your hands on a Milwaukee or Makita or a Flex, heck, most budget brands as well, 50, 60, 100 foot-pounds. Of course, we're the torque test channel. You'll have to excuse us for fixating on torque. Drivers are used for a lot of things, including small screws where control and size are ranked far above power, but look at these. The fact that the original Freak line of tools from Bosch had a legacy of 5 years of people buying them, using them, enjoying them, enough for those sales to encourage Bosch corporate to make more, and then this 1800 Gen 2 model this many years later, and that model appears to have this quite good brushless motor and impact mechanism. You guys are the real MVPs for buying these Gen 1s and Gen 1.5s. Without you, no one would have gotten this Gen 2 that really actually brings the beans. Although the largest serving those beans might be via an impact extension, if you can fit it, you'll have to ask Bosch why that is. Subscribe to see the dyno make fools of us all once again, as I'm sure that will happen sooner rather than later. Thanks for watching.